seconds.
Good morning. Premier Bennett has laid down tough new rules for disclosures. Now let's see if I understand them. From now on, all MLAs, not just cabinet officials, must put their stock holdings, their private investments, in an independent trust to be seen by all on the disclosure forms, or in a blind trust to be seen only by the Auditor General. Now that's good. There are people who want all politicians in power to divest themselves of all their stock holdings. Let's just lay that to rest by saying that's an election issue and that's not Bennett's position. But what worries me, or what causes me a problem, is that only one kind of conflict has been defined, as in Waterland. A cabinet minister must not hold stock in any company related directly to his portfolio. But yet Stephen Rogers, the environment minister, in the same cabinet, in the same room, discussing the same issues, may hold the same stock as Waterland and not be in conflict. Perhaps what should be done is that there should be an auditor, a registrar, as in Ottawa, who goes through the holdings and says, you may invest in this, you may not invest in that, sell it. My own opinion is that Stephen Rogers should have resigned. Bennett has taken his position, drawn his line, so from now on in, the question of conflict of interest is another election issue. Now on the program today, do you know what methadone is? Some of you probably don't. Methadone is a narcotic, a legal narcotic when it's prescribed by the government or its agency to give to former heroin addicts to keep them hopefully on an even keel and keep them away from the battles and the warfare in the streets for heroin. Now, methadone addicts, of whom there are about 600 in the Lower Mainland, are in a panic. They're fearful of a new scheme which is going to wipe out privately prescribed methadone, authorized, mind you, from doctors. You're going to meet some of these panicky methadone addicts who have some cause for concern in a meeting I held the other day, and part of which you can see now.
To me, going to the foundation is like sitting down in the Blackstone Hotel waiting for a local pusher to come in so everybody can score.
The worst part of it is I'd be forced to associate with the people that I've been trying for years of my life, half of my life now, to get away from.
Because they're going to have to use new clinics to get the methadone, and that worries them. Now, here to tell us about that are two people. Carl Stroh, who's Regional Director of the Alcohol and Drug Foundation, and Dr. Douglas Graham, who is Medical Advisor to the same body. Also on today's program, you're going to get the other side of the abortion issue. Last week, we had the pro-choice people on talking about putting the abortion laws on trial. Today, two segments with Betty Green of the Vancouver Right to Life Society. First, after the break, the methadone addicts. Hold it, hold it, hold it. Come March the 1st, according to the Ministry of Health, no former heroin addict is going to be allowed to collect their methadone prescriptions from a doctor's office. And that means between, 600 and 800 former heroin addicts now on methadone are going to have to go to clinics in Vancouver and elsewhere to get the drug that keeps them from becoming total junkies again. And I'm in a little meeting of 12 of them in a house in the Lower Mainland. And I don't really know why they're so upset. You know, it means they've got to go to the clinic to get the methadone, so what? Brenda.
Okay, what it means is I went on methadone so I could lead a normal life.
How many years ago?
16 years.
You had been on heroin before that?
A few times, yeah. I had more problems with diet pills.
But anyway, you've been on methadone since 16 years.
Yeah, 16 years. And when the initial program started, you had to go in daily, which I can speak for everyone here. You have no objections to that. And you more or less you kept going for several months, and then you could go once a week. In other words, once a week allowed you to lead a normal life.
That was to the clinic. Get your urinalysis and pick up and take your methadone directly.
Yeah, you took it orally there. Now, as far as I'm concerned, if they're just giving methadone to pacify people, there's no point. The main reason for giving methadone, it's social and vocational rehabilitation. Now,
Forever, though. In your case, forever. You'll be on methadone till the end of your days.
at that time, I signed a contract. We were encouraged to go on it. Now, I don't know whether, I mean, we're no different than anyone else. It's the methadone. It's, you don't mind taking it. It's different.
Makes you functional.
Okay, on methadone, you can be coherent. You don't. It differs from heroin in that it doesn't produce euphoria.
Produces a levelness instead of a high.
You could.
But let's get down to the point. If they carry out their word and say no more doctors' prescriptions, they've done it for a reason, haven't they?
Okay.
What was the reason they did it for?
Because some people abused the program, and there still should be a clinic for these people. But for those who haven't abused it.
In other words, you what you might call good patients on methadone should not be humiliated into going back to a clinic.
Precisely, because there's the reason we don't want to go back. It's not just a matter of traveling from point A to point B. When we go back there, we're going to be associating.
I'll come back to you later.
Okay.
Now, what about Brenda? Debbie's your name, right?
Yeah.
How old are you, Debbie?
I'm 31.
Married?
Yeah.
Kids?
Yep.
A husband?
Yeah.
Are both of you on methadone?
Yeah, we are.
So-
And
I don't like to emphasize the obvious, but I've got to make the point. How long have the two of you been on methadone as an alternate and a legitimate alternative to heroin?
I've been on longer. I've been on since I was 19, on and off. And for the last 4 years with a private doctor.
And you're working just now?
Yeah, I'm working, and the job that I'm working at is, you know, there's no way I could go in every day because working in a cannery, you know, I start.
The clinic requires too.
Yeah.
Oh, just a minute. The clinic would require you to go in every day. At the moment, you get a prescription which lasts you for a week. 100 milligrams does you.
I get 90.
You get 90 milligrams, and that does you how long?
Per day.
2 weeks.
Sorry, that's per day.
That's per day. Yeah, 90 milligrams per day, and I go in once every 2 weeks and pick it up, talk to the doctor.
In other words, if you had to go to a clinic every day, you'll be out of work and back on welfare.
Exactly.
Now, Brenda, and you're Linda.
Linda.
Linda, what's the score with you?
The same situation.
Were you a criminal junkie at one time? I don't like to say this,
Yes.
but I got to. And you got nailed for it.
No.
You never got nailed for it.
No.
Tell me about you and your husband. What does he do?
Right now he's waiting for a job.
And you?
Right beside you. Myself, I work at the canneries as well.
You work at the cannery as well. You got a family?
Yes.
Family. Now, you say that if the government insists that you go to this place every day, to a government clinic, what does that do to your life?
It is going to turn my whole life around and put me right back where I was 2 years, 8 months ago.
Well, now, what are your objections again? Who wants to tell me the objections of going to the clinic?
I will. I do not want to associate with the people that go to the clinic. I do not want to associate with the people that hang around the clinic for various reasons. And I do not want to lose my job because I have to go to the clinic. I do not want to go back on welfare and be a total...
Yeah, I know what you mean. Is that a valid point? Does it mean that the clinic Well, I remember complaints about the clinics on Broadway at 8th and Canby, and scores of people being around peddling all kinds of stuff, eh?
To me, going to the foundation is like sitting down in the Blackstone Hotel waiting for a local pusher to come in so everybody can score.
And there's something else you must keep in mind. The clinic, the people that go there, some of them are they're just trying to get into the program, so they're still into the criminal activity street scene.
Yeah.
In other words, you're the reformed one.
You could say that, yeah.
And you've been reformed for 16 years.
60, and the clinic would verify this. I had an exemplary record.
What was your bill last?
$840. That included, that would be a doctor's prescription and methadone. Now see...
Not the urinalysis.
No, now that is the point there.
When
Now,
you go to a doctor's office, how often do you get urinalized?
checking.
Spot checking.
Now there's something, and I think we agree to. We do not mind going into a clinic maybe once a month.
For your urinalysis and to pick up your prescription.
Yeah, and the reason, I don't want to pick up prescriptions there. No.
We want to keep that with
Yeah,
a private doctor.
What's the government response to your complaints? Have you made them follow me?
To talk.
Have you tried to talk to anybody?
Yeah, I've got my lawyer doing it for me now.
Trying to do it for you now. Have you not been
Okay.
in touch with Nielsen at all?
We have been told that from pharmacists, doctors, that nobody really knows what's going on. They're trying to put a program together, but once a government
Don't
plan
forget-
is through, it's too late. So
Don't forget that caper up the valley somewhere where some kids got methadone by accident and some other prescription. You know, that's one of the reasons to say they don't want to...
No, not that one.
That's one.
We'll do this particular back of the head. They what? Oh, forget that. How long have you been on methadone?
I've been on methadone 3 years now.
3 years.
3 years.
Tell me something. You're an older woman. Couldn't you break it like me in cigarettes?
No, I couldn't miss. I tried. I moved out of town. I started using drugs when I was 19 years old. I moved to Kelowna. I kept coming down
And
and
you were
picking up
using
more.
them until 3 years ago.
Yeah, until I got on with the doctor.
Now, you have a husband and wife problem, don't you?
Yes, we
What's
both
your
work.
situation?
Well, both of us are working at the time, and my husband works a revolving shift. And if he's going to have to go to a clinic even 2 or 3 times a week, there's no way he can travel into Vancouver and where he works.
So you say that if you're forced to go to a clinic for your methadone, it's going to put you onto welfare. Is that right?
Well, I hope not, because we own our own home, and he's been working for over 30 years at the same place.
You've never been on welfare,
I've never been on welfare.
even although you've had this drug problem in
Well,
the past.
no, I was on welfare, pardon me, before I married my husband. When I was on heroin, I was on welfare.
Don't you wish you could get off the damn stuff?
Well, I do, but I found it was the lesser of 2 evils, and that was 13 years ago, and I seem to have done very well on it.
What do you feel about the whole caper?
I think it's disgusting they're even thinking about doing something like this to people. I mean, how can people straighten out when they're trying to help themselves? They're
It
just
must be
pushing
because
about.
they don't trust you.
Well, why? After 20 years, they can't tell me they don't trust me. I've worked most of my life.
But do many of you or your friends get caught in the urinalysis with a hot test?
I'm not worried about. They can test me all they
Doctor.
want.
Very seldom at doctor's offices.
I am going there now to the clinic, and I can't get it. They won't even put me into Surrey, where I live so close to it.
You got to go into Vancouver.
Vancouver
Cliffs.
and Surrey clinic is 6 blocks from my house, or my trailer where I live.
Why can't you switch the other one?
They won't let me go. They've tried to. I cannot get there. My husband goes there, but not me.
And now you. Mm-hmm. You look just as bright as a button. What's your problem today, ma'am?
You know, the exact same thing everybody else is here for.
Husband as well?
Yes.
Were you on the street at one time, I mean, criminally involved? Mm-hmm. How long have you been in methadone?
3 years.
3 years? And you don't take a big dose?
No, well, moderately.
Moderate
About
dose.
the same as everybody else.
And at the moment, you also go to, do you all go to the same doctor?
No.
No, different doctors, of the half dozen or so prescribed. Mm-hmm. Well. I'll see what the government is going to say about this. Now, would you shut up for a minute? Yap. Does anybody want to add anything that I've forgotten or omitted or whatnot? Now, I forgot about John down here.
One thing, Jack, you know, some people have found, you know, after decades and decades on, you know, one narcotic or another, either heroin or methadone, you know, that they just can't live without it.
That's the way you feel.
That's the way I know that to be a fact.
And you want to get it from a doctor so you're not humiliated in going into a clinic and queuing
Not
up for
just the
it.
humiliation part of it. The worst part of it is I'd be forced to associate with the people that I've been trying for years of my life, half of my life now, to get away from.
It's a problem. We'll follow it up with the Foundation and with the Ministry of Health. The deadline is March the 1st. They're still to build the new clinics. I'll be back after the break. That's one side of the story from the methadone addicts. Now, the date for the new scheme to start is April 1st. But here is Dr. Graham, Douglas Graham, medical advisor to the Foundation, and Carol Stroh, regional director for the Lower Mainland. Now, I think what you should tell me first is, why are you changing the system? Why are you wiping out the prescribing by private doctors in the main for the methadone addicts?
Mr. Webster, there's been an awful problem over the last few years with an increasing number of addicts, an increasing amount of methadone available on the streets, which has been diverted to the streets from legally prescribed prescriptions. There's been no real attempt to get people into rehabilitation, and because of the private market, the whole point of having methadone's been lost.
How much, if I'm an addict and I've got a prescription for methadone, how much is that worth to me? If I go and draw my prescription and then have the material, when I go to a private doctor, how do I get my methadone?
You get it as a solution, a liquid, and it's worth roughly $1 a milligram. So if you're getting a script for, say, 100 milligrams a day, which is usual in the private market, that's worth about $100 a day to you.
Do you suspect that there's been a fair amount of methadone prescriptions, bottled and ready to be taken, that have been sold on the market?
Oh, yes.
And you're telling me if you have a 100 milligram prescription, you can sell that for 100 milligrams a day?
That's right.
But if you're a legitimate junkie, ex-junkie, you'll take your own methadone, won't you?
Well, if you get a high enough dose, you only need to take half of it, and then you can sell the other half if it's not being controlled.
Now, what do you think of some of the amounts that were named on that program? 90 milligrams, there was one of 100 milligrams. Is that the kind of dose they would get at the Foundation's clinics at the moment?
Well, one of the problems is that there are certain guidelines laid down by federal and provincial protocols, and the maximum dosage is usually around about 80 milligrams, which is a reasonably high dose and usually will hold most people. Some people are getting over 200 milligrams a day in the private sector.
And they had to go to the doctors. When does the prescribing by doctors finish for sure, and perhaps for good?
That's uncertain at the moment. It'll be staggered. It'll be made as easy a transition as possible. There'll be no draconian measures of instant chop off and everybody left on the... It'll be an easy transition, we hope.
Now, tell me about the urinalysis. Is urinalysis essential on a regular basis for people on methadone, and if so, why?
It's essential because then, first of all, you can tell whether they're taking the methadone or not. And secondly, you can tell whether other drugs are being used at the same time.
Heroin, for instance.
Heroin, for instance, or other drugs. The whole point of methadone is to get people off other drugs and eventually, hopefully, to lead them to a drug-free lifestyle.
Ideally, therefore, should a methadone... Some of these methadone addicts have been on for 16 years, 13 years, 2 years and 10 months. Why so long?
Because there's no attempt to to rehabilitate them. And let's face it, some people, frankly, just don't want off the methadone. It's an easy way to go. But the whole point of methadone is to try and rehabilitate people.
So basically speaking there for Mr. Stroh, is it the government's decision, entirely the government's decision, to stop the private prescribing and to put it in the hands of the Alcohol and Drug Foundation?
No, not at all. This is a decision that was made by a committee with representatives from the BC Association of Pharmacists, the College of Physicians and Surgeons, the Medical Association, the Ministry of Health, federal government. So a large number of concerned agencies basically wrestled with this Parliament, made the decision that this was the way to go.
That half dozen agencies looked at the, what did they look at? Looked at the abuses of the present system and says it's got to stop.
That's right.
Now, there are a number of social aspects. First of all, have you decided precisely what your new system is going to be? There was some talk about opening new clinics.
We still have a few details because we've had roughly 1 month now to get the new program ready, so we still have a number of details to work out, but we have the basic elements set in place. We know that we're going to be opening 2 new clinics in addition to the to the one that we have. That's just in the Vancouver area. We know that all of our clinics throughout the province will be able to provide methadone to those clients who are on methadone throughout the
How many
province.
clinics have we got throughout the province?
Oh, we have over 60 programs throughout the province. Outpatient clinics, we're looking at about 25 clinics.
Yeah, you've got some in Burnaby and Surrey and Vancouver.
Campbell River, Nanaimo, Kelowna, throughout the province.
How many people are getting methadone in the province?
Right now there are, it's a little hard to tell how many people, but we know there are 600 people receiving prescriptions in the private sector, and we're dealing with 170 now. Now, of that 600, we don't know how many people are double doctoring or triple doctoring, so you may have one individual that shows up on the records 3 or 4 times.
Or maybe some of them are half doctoring, selling half the prescriptions.
Exactly.
So therefore, there were enough abuses that you felt this had to stop.
That's right, yes.
Now, what about the social aspects? I mean, some of these girls, on the face of it, seem to make a good case. I'm getting my prescription from the doctor. I go and I get a 2 weeks prescription from the doctor. And if they get that, they can take it all at once if they want to.
No, they wouldn't take it all at once. If they say they're getting a 2-week prescription from the doctor, what that means is they go into the doctor's office, they're given a script, they can then go and they're getting 2 weeks supply of methadone that they take home with them. They take it on a daily basis. So they have a 2-week supply.
Do they get a whole collection of wee bottles?
They might, or from the private source, they might end up getting a sort of a gallon jug with a lot of methadone in it, and they can use what they need or sell what they need.
Say that again, they can use what they need or sell what they don't need.
Or sell what they don't need.
Have there been many cases where methadone addicts have been found, charged and convicted for using heroin at the same time?
Well, that's one of the problems with a methadone program, is that people are used to using a whole variety of street drugs, and they're going to continue to use that as long as they're not monitored. So the purpose of the methadone program is to try to monitor that and get them to cut back on heroin and other street drugs.
So therefore, it was a basic mistake sometime in the past in allowing any private prescription at all and letting it go into doctors. I mean, he horrifies me with the thought of a gallon jug of methadone. You're not joking on that.
Not at all. We've seen that.
A gallon jug of methadone, which is as good as money on the black market.
That's right.
And that's why you want constant checking. Now, back to the social aspect. What about these women who work in the canneries? Maybe, how can they work and go each and every day to a clinic to get the one little dose and knock it back?
Okay, our program is going to be set up to be as flexible as possible. We want these people to remain employed. The whole purpose of the program is to help them gain employment, so we don't want to disrupt that. So we're going to have, in the first place, we're not going to require these people to come in 7 days a week. We're going to require, in the beginning, 3 times a week. And for those who are...
So they'll get carries?
They'll get carries at the beginning. We will be assessing them, we'll be taking your analysis, and those people who are doing well, we can look at dropping off to 2 times a week. In exceptional circumstances, if the circumstances warrant it, we can even go to once a week. Even in the beginning, with 3 times a week, we're going to have clinics that are operating from 6 in the morning till 10 in the evening. So even if a person is working, 6 in the morning to 10 in the evening, 7 days a week. So there's a lot of flexibility there. People should be able to get into the clinic sometime.
With all the clinics you've got now, plus a couple more?
That's right.
Will they be government clinics as such?
The new clinics we're hoping that the new clinics, in fact, will be run by a private society. One of our plans is to run this program basically as a private society rather than as a government agency. And we're currently negotiating with the private society.
I've got more questions for Dr. Graham and for Carol Stroh, but I'll take calls from methadone addicts or whoever's interested after the break. Now, it's conceivable, gentlemen, that some of the addicts I saw this morning are as clean as a whistle, faithful as whatever, and carefully use their methadone for themselves. But are these people who talked about 90 and 100 milligrams, is that a large dose?
90 and 100, yes, that's a fairly high dose. Once you get, it depends on the size of the person, of course, and certain other aspects, but generally most people can be held at between 60 and 80 milligrams, and some people with far less.
Now, you were talking about this gallon jug, which ain't going to escape my mind. If they're double doctoring, what does that mean, double doctoring?
That means that a person may go with the same name or have a false identity, but nevertheless they go to different doctors who are not aware of each other and obtain prescriptions for methadone from each.
But has a doctor been able to look at me and listen to my complaints and say, okay, you're a junkie, I'll give you methadone?
Yes, this could have been done, but the doctor has to be authorized to prescribe methadone by the federal government.
I know, but what about the particular patient? Has there been any government authority to prescribe methadone to a particular patient? I might be Joe Blow today and Joe Blue yesterday. Is my identity known to the doctor before he prescribes the drug? No.
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 Well, that was a big hole in the scheme, wasn't it? Eh?
That's right. Plus, the ability now is to more or less choose the physician. Therefore, naturally, the word is on the street very quickly about who's a liberal prescriber, and therefore they get a lot of requests.
As a doctor, could I make a good income on charging all these visits on my MSP? Because I presume they're covered by MSP, aren't they?
Yes, they are in some cases. Some pay privately. But yes, there have been cases where physicians have billed enormous amounts for prescribing to addicts.
How much?
There was one physician billed over $100,000 in 1 month.
Well, that is somewhat of a large amount, I must say this. Now, back to this, I remember in the old days when I covered drug addicts like a blanket, that around the clinic on Broadway, it was like a scene out of New York. People flogging pills, buying pills, selling pills, falling down, queuing up, fighting and shouting. Right. And those clean people in that room have a legitimate complaint that they don't want to mix with the old Blackstone Hotel mob.
I agree. In the first place, the clinic scene that you recall from the past isn't the clinic scene today at our clinics. It's very much a different scene. In the second place, because of the fact that we're going to have so many clinics with such a wide range of hours, we can almost set up appointments for clients. And we can very certainly have segments of clinic time at different locations that are available to clients who are working, who are clean cut, who don't want to be mixing with the street element. That's very possible, and that's our intention.
That woman in Surrey, for instance, who has to go to Vancouver, under the new system, will she be able to go to Surrey?
Yes, she will.
So it's what you're doing. How many altogether in the province do you think are taking methadone or getting methadone?
At the present time, if we accept that each client who officially shows up is a different individual, and that's something we question because of the double and triple doctoring, we have a total of about 770 clients.
On methadone?
That's right.
And most of them, somebody said they were put on methadone for diet pills, or they were talking about somebody. Does that seem right, if they're right?
No, that's not right at all. The original intention of methadone was that it be used specifically with heroin addicts and perhaps more generally with narcotic addicts. It was never intended for use for any other drug at all.
Mm-hmm. And you think you can avoid the reappearance of the old criminal centres around clinics that I remember from 20 years ago?
Very definitely.
Well, 600 or 700 methadone addicts, we have no idea how many heroin addicts. It's not quite as popular, it would seem, as it was before the days of coke, hash and pot.
That's right. In fact, our experience is that there are very few of the old-style heroin addicts out there in BC. And the reason for this is there are two main reasons. One, today, most people on the street are multi-drug abusers. They're taking everything and anything that's available. So they're not just using one drug of choice. They're not becoming addicted just to that drug. The other reason is that the quality of the narcotics that are on the street compares, in the old days we had an unusual quality of say 30% purity. Some shipments were up as high as 55% purity. Today we're looking at 1% purity. So most of the people out there using narcotics on the street are using such poor quality narcotics that they're not really becoming addicted to narcotics.
The heroin pushers have been weaning them by diluting.
That's right, and the police activity has been very effective internationally in cutting down on the supply.
Just let me sum up. You're doing this scheme because of what you feel are severe abuses and financial rackets and the peddling of methadone, the lack of regular urinalysis and spot checking, the possibility of double doctoring adding it to the street. Right. You'll start at April the 1st for everyone.
April the 1st is the deadline when we will have our clinics open. From that point on, we'll then be gradually phasing in. We'll be negotiating with each of the doctors involved, and over a period of months, we'll be gradually negotiating a phase-in.
And if a person doesn't want to come to you, they can do without the methadone?
Well, there are a variety of other treatment options available. If an individual chooses not to come into one of our methadone clinics, there's a whole variety of residential treatment, detoxification, outpatient counseling. Methadone, let's keep in mind one important fact, and that is that methadone maintenance is only one treatment option for people with drug addiction. and even with heroin
It's
addiction.
the easiest one, though, isn't it?
It would be if you were, yes.
It's the easiest one for the client.
For the client.
Okay, I'll take calls and questions now to Dr. Douglas Graham, Medical Advisor to the Alcohol and Drug Foundation, and to Carol Stroh, Regional Director for Greater Vancouver, to be specific, after the break. I mean, these women on 13 and 16 years really make you wonder. Is it a possibility that younger people have been put on methadone under the abuses in the system up to now who shouldn't have been put on?
Yes, more than a possibility. Our experience has been, and that's one of our concerns has been in the past, that there are a fair number of young people who aren't using narcotics who get put on methadone maintenance by private physicians. They're not addicted to narcotics when they start, but after being on a methadone maintenance program for a few months, they're addicted to narcotics, and then it's a very difficult task to withdraw them.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning. I'm an ex-heroin addict and methadone addict. I've been clean for the last 6 years. The doctors and your guests there tend to be overlooking a few major points here, accusing the outside doctors who are delivering or prescribing to patients, and these patients are abusing the system. Granted, this takes place. But by the same token, I know of patients that are on the programs that they are sponsoring who are also selling their methadone. And this is fact. I could buy it today if I wanted from any one of those patients, and it'd be their methadone.
Is that
the
right?
other thing is,
right,
the quality of the dope is down nowadays. A lot of these people that are being put on the program aren't really addicts and become methadone addicts.
Well,
They
that
were
point,
chippers
just a
before
minute.
that. Now, what the government is not doing is, why is there no type of counseling? An alcoholic gets counseling. There's no attempt to try and discover what motivates these people. Some people, like the people you interviewed, definitely should or will need to be on methadone for the rest of their lives. I was classified as that myself. Through my own motivation, got off.
Okay,
now, if you just prescribe the methadone and there's no follow-up treatment from the people that are prescribing it, and an attempt to help them, I mean, you're going to have these abuses continue on.
Now, he made a couple of good points, and you agree that there are people on methadone who shouldn't be on methadone now.
That's right.
And the motivation of the counseling. What do you do? Do you do that in your other programs at all? These people I saw this morning might have had no counseling for God knows how many years.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons that a more controlled program is required, because methadone maintenance by itself, if you're just giving out the drug, you're really accomplishing very little. It has to be. The experience right across the country is that you have to combine that with counseling. Our clinics do provide that. The new clinics we're setting up as well
So it was a
will provide that.
I can say clearly it was a mistake to allow private prescriptions of methadone from the very beginning.
Yes.
Well, I would disagree, but I went through a private thing, and it was them that helped me. When I first was involved in Canada, I left the country actually, and I got help in another country. When I was first involved in Canada, it was the old one on Broadway there, and you just had to come in and give 3 days positive urine sample with heroin in your system, and they supplied you methadone.
I remember that, sir, and thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I know a man that was taking a urine sample from someone else to a doctor in Chilliwack and getting methadone and selling it. He was on no drugs himself, but needed extra money, and that was his way of doing it. So I think that's a very good idea.
Thank you, ma'am. That was not uncommon. Even if I weren't a junkie, I could collect a heroin-tainted sample 3 days in a row, go to the clinic or to a doctor and get my methadone prescriptions.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. And the other side of that, Jack, is that if you are on a methadone program, you can buy, there's a market for clean urine samples. You can buy a clean urine sample and take it into the doctor so that you show you're doing well in the program.
Oh, I mean, surely you got to give you only needed 2 little bottles.
That's right.
A pretend one and a clean one you've got from a buddy.
Exactly. That's right.
There is no end to the devices or deviousness, is there?
We've had people come into our clinics with false tubes and false bladders, and they'll go to any extreme to provide a false sample to show that they're doing well. That's why we have to have supervised urine samples.
In other words, a false sample will show they're doing well and leave them on methadone. A hot sample, when they're not addicted, will get the methadone to which they're not entitled, which they can sell at a buck a gram, buck a milligram.
Milligram, yes.
Oh, my goodness. Go ahead, please.
Yes, it's Lori, Jack. I was on your show many years ago with my newborn daughter.
Yes, Laurie.
And I've been off methadone 3 times in the last 10 years, and I find that I just can't function off it. I'm with a private doctor now who is following government protocol. I go twice a week. I leave my specimen at the clinic, but I don't have to take my kids there. I'm on 110 milligrams a day because, and I'd like to ask the doctor about what he thinks of the endorphin theory.
The question about the endorphin theory, we haven't time to talk about that on the show.
Of course you have time to talk about it. I mean, my body is not producing enough endorphins.
So that's your excuse for 110 milligrams, which is a hefty dose.
I never fall asleep. I never fall asleep. I never nod out. I've successfully raised a 7-year-old daughter, and now I have an infant son. I can't take him to the clinic. So they're going to have to pay for a homemaker to come in to my place for 2 hours a day for every day I go to the clinic. That's going to cost money. You know, where's my right to privacy?
Oh, but where's
so you can disprove the endorphin theory.
Oh, now you're getting a little bit paranoid about it.
No, we don't have enough painkillers in our body, Jack.
Well, but you're still getting a little bit paranoid about it, and surely yours is a matter for some good clinical look at. You can't say, okay, I don't produce the endorphins, give me a homemaker, send a cab for me every day to go to the clinic and all the rest of it. I mean, I have a lot of sympathy with you, but there must be a medical answer to her problem. You're going to a private doctor.
I go to a private doctor twice a week.
Can I make a point that...
Yeah.
I leave a specimen at the clinic, why can't you work in conjunction?
If we're giving the impression that all physicians prescribing methadone have been erring, that's not true. There are some physicians who have done a very good job indeed. It's the problem is with a few people who have been messing the system around.
Okay, love, I suggest that you get in touch with your doctor and the foundation, work together on your particular medical problem.
That's exactly right.
Thanks, my love. From Sandspit. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Dr. Graham, what I was wondering, my husband and I have been on methadone for 12 years on Vancouver Island, and because of my husband's logging, we're now in a logging camp up in the Queen Charlotte. What would happen if there is no foundation to go into? Right now we're leaving supervised samples once a week. What would happen there? We would have to relocate and go on welfare? Or?
No, not at all. We have, in fact, right now on our caseload, we have a number of clients who are in the same kind of situation, and our program can be flexible. We just have to make sure by the supervised urine samples, etc., that we're dealing with someone that warrants the kind of trust involved in that situation, and then we can make exceptions.
So if you're not abusing the program, you could stay in your job site and wouldn't have to relocate.
That's right. We have a number of people in exactly the same situation, in logging camps or working on fishing boats, and it's obvious, it would be ridiculous for us to ask them to give up their jobs and come into our clinic, so we don't do that.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning. I've been off of drugs now for about 4 years, but I was on methadone for about 6 months. Before that, I was an addict because of prescription drugs. I was injured on the job, and so I was seeing the whole thing, and I went down to Broadway when it was running, and I go to a private doctor now who happens to give out methadone to people who are addicts. And I'll tell you right now, it's going to be hell if you reopen those clinics, because I've seen him cut off people right on the spot, throw them out of his office when they've been fooling around, and he doesn't stand for any nonsense. And these people that go there now, people that I know who are addicts, they're fantastic people and really sensitive, caring, good fathers and mothers. And I don't know, this is wrong. This is very, very wrong, and something's got to be done about it. So I'll hang up.
Good, thank you. He said he wasn't on heroin. He was put on methadone after an accident. Does that sound could have happened?
A lot of things could have happened, Jack. There's a point that he made that I'd like to emphasize, and that is that we recognize too, and I'd like to get that point across to the public. There are a lot of good clients out there who are sensitive, caring individuals who have good jobs, they're raising families, they're doing well. Let's emphasize that point. And our program recognizes that point, and we're going to be doing our best to meet their needs and provide a reasonable service.
On the other side of the coin, you made it very clear to me that the abuses are in some ways so horrendous that you've got to change the system, and you've got to stop the good doctors prescribing along with the others not so good.
Yes.
Is that right?
We cannot make the judgment who's good and who's bad.
And that's a decision of BC Med, BC College, your thing, and the number of other
And the
groups.
pharmacist, yeah.
And the federal government.
More calls after the break. And Carol Strove from the
Yes.
From the foundation. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. I am 35 years old, and I am now with a private doctor on methadone. I've been on methadone 12 years. Previous to that, I was a heroin addict, and I've had 5 heroin charges. This is like previously, before I was on methadone. And I'd just like to say that I disagree totally with this move to the government-run clinics. It, I think, will totally disrupt everybody.
How much is a prescription a day?
I think approximately I get 80 milligrams a day.
Mm-hmm. You got a family?
I have a husband.
And
Husband is also on methadone. During this time, we've lived in many logging camps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, living out of town in logging camps, and I don't know. It's just totally changed my life as an individual. They say about counseling by private doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I find the private doctor that he knows me. As for counseling, if something upsets me, or I can go in and talk to him, I feel that it's treated more individually.
What would happen if you stopped taking methadone today?
Oh, gee, if I stopped taking methadone today,
Mm-hmm.
well, I would be on withdrawal. After 12 years, I would be either dead or very, very, very ill.
Would she, Doc?
She wouldn't die, but she wouldn't feel very well for
Oh,
a while.
I wouldn't feel very well at all after 12 years.
Well, if you're a good client, there's hope for her. I don't want to give any false hopes. What do you say if she is a good, honest client who doesn't flog it in the black market, who doesn't sell half the stuff at $100 a milligram?
There should be no problems at all. In fact, in addition to being maintained in very much the same kind of program that she's had, she'll have available to her full-time counselors, special group programs for parents,
But she's got to come in the first instance. You're going to have everybody in the first instance.
Everybody who wants to come.
It
will
takes so
come
many
2 times a
years,
week.
though, to build up
Well, hold on a
confidence,
second,
like
love.
talking to, once you get used to one single doctor for so many years, he knows you.
I know it's really kind of sad to hear that, but the point I'm making is everybody presently receiving a private doctor's prescription will, in the course of the phasing in after April the 1st, have to go to one of the clinics. Is that right?
That's
That's
correct,
right.
yeah.
And they will all be accepted. There will be a transfer over, so
All
all
be
of them will be accepted.
And depending on the record and the behavior will depend how many times they've got to go and get
That's
their
right.
carries.
That's right.
That's right.
Their carries being the prescriptions made up with tang, which they can take away and hopefully use for themselves and their husbands. You hear how many husband and wife teams there are in this?
Yes.
Sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okie dokie, I think I disposed of that one. Go ahead, please.
I've been an addict for approximately 13 years.
Heroin or methadone?
On methadone, yes, methadone, and occasionally Valium. But now the only progress. Now I put in about 6 years with government-run clinics, and about the other 7 with doctors. Now the only progress I've ever made is with private doctors. Clinics, whenever I've attended clinics, I've always fallen back with the street people. When I was going to the clinic, I was busted twice. I did a year in Ocala, and you know, it's ridiculous to me what they're doing. The proposed legislation to force everyone to go to government-run clinics. I just, you know, it's just going to backfire. It's going to.
But what if you were the government and you found that there were vast medical bills, vast prescription bills, lots of rackets, methadone?
Let me answer it. Now, if everybody goes over to the clinic, the only difference in cost is going to be, now I am not going to stop going to doctors. Say people that are on welfare. The only difference is the only medications that the government are not going to have to foot are the methadone bills. And that is only a very minor cost. I'm still going to be getting the Valiums, which the government's going to have to pay for, the antibiotics, and all the rest of the drugs.
Hold on that one. If he goes, can he go and get his Valium regardless from a doctor? I suppose he could if the doctor doesn't know he's a heroin addict.
If he's on methadone, then there should be no reason whatever that he's on any other drug that's of a sedative nature.
Methadone and methadone alone.
That's correct. If he's on Valium, that would show up in his urinalysis. And because of the government protocols, the federal government, they suggest that that is not the case. He should not be on other medications at the same time.
But if the doctor doesn't do urinalysis, the doctor might just prescribe it.
Yes.
Well, my doctor is doing urinalysis. He does it each time I go there. And if my doctor decides that I need Valium, if I'm a hyperactive person, don't you think this is a medical question? You know, that my doctor should decide?
So you're getting methadone and Valium?
Well, I was getting Valium long before I was, became an addict.
I haven't time to go through your medical prescription problems, but...
No, I'm not. I'm just saying.
I know.
I'm just trying to get to the point that I believe this whole thing is a medical question, not a political, political one.
Right.
It's a medical question.
It is a medical question.
And admittedly, by the way, Jack, there are a few bad apples out there. There are people that sell their juice, but the vast majority of people, all they want to do is lead normal lives as uncomplicated as possible. And being on with private doctors, they're all split up.
Fair enough.
If they go to clinics, we're all going to be bunched together again, going to be associating with other addicts, and it's just going to make things worse. I don't understand why this is happening. It makes no sense at all.
There's a bit of a red herring there as well, Jack. There is a legitimate concern. Some of these clients really don't want to mix with the street addicts, and we can accommodate that in our new clinics. Where the bit of the red herring comes in is that a large number of clients who go to the private physicians are there because they wouldn't comply with the requirements of a more structured program. They're the more difficult clients, more of the street element. That's why they're going to the private physician. If a private physician has 80 to 100 of these people, you're associating with the worst element by going to a private physician. So in many instances, that's really a red herring. You're going to be getting away from that street element by going to the government clinic where there are
80
more
to
rigid
100,
requirements.
a doctor might have 80 to 100 methadone people.
Some physicians have, yes.
More after the break. Now, maybe we've been giving a wrong impression. These two new clinics, are they going to be government clinics?
They're going to be run by, government will provide the funds, but they're going to be run by a private society that we're still negotiating with.
Where will they be?
One will be in Burnaby and the other will be in Vancouver.
And they'll be half-decent places, hopefully?
Yes, they will. Very decent.
And the present clinics, you assure me, are not presently surrounded by the old thugs I knew in the old days?
That's right. You're welcome to come down and visit.
Some of my best friends. Go ahead from Powell River.
Morning, Jack.
Morning.
I would like to identify myself as a recovering alcoholic.
Right.
That is to say, I have an incurable disease, but I no longer have to drink. I do this through the grace of God and a program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I have never taken drugs, but I have friends who are duly addicted who have totally recovered from the necessity to use heroin.
Some people do.
Pardon?
Some people do, but I don't need to... Well, what's your final point?
My point is that it can be done without the use of methadone. I've heard very little said about the use of the program of Narcotics Anonymous or any other free available program that works.
Carl, Dr. Graham?
Yeah. Absolutely agree with him. We haven't talked about that, but Carl said already that methadone is only one method of treating.
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I've been a heroin addict for probably 15 years, and I just lost my private doctor in August, and I've been going to this clinic in Vancouver, and I just can't believe the treatment that I've been receiving there and the people that I have to run into that I haven't seen for maybe, I've been on a private doctor for 18 months, and the treatment that I'm receiving at this clinic is just abominable. The doctors, they just don't have any sympathy for our problems. I work full-time. I've got 2 years university, and I'm well acquainted with what is going on. And I think giving up the private doctors is just terrible. I think when I lost my private doctor and I had to come into a clinic, I just couldn't believe running into all those old
hold on
people
a
that I
second.
hadn't seen for years.
What do you say to her complaints, Carl?
My complaints are is that I don't feel they're equipped to deal with us.
No, but we've had your complaints.
Okay,
Is she right?
I was on Valium for 10 years. When they withdraw me from Valium, my left arm went paralyzed. It's affecting me at work now. Going into the clinic, they don't give me my dosage. I have to sit around in there and sometimes wait for an hour and a half before I get my dosage.
Just a minute.
I think we've hit the nail on the head there. People feel they're being mistreated when they come to the clinic if the clinic doesn't agree to give them Valium, if the clinic doesn't agree to give them twice the dosage they require, if the clinic puts requirements on them, they feel they're being mistreated.
And this is the reason you're putting this in, because you feel there has been considerable abuse under the private physician prescription plan.
That's
What's
correct.
your dosage?
My dosage is 80 milligrams a day. It doesn't hold me. When I was on with a private doctor, at least I could maybe take 40 in the morning, and then when it started to wear off, because I'm a highly active person, it would start to wear off around 6 o'clock. I could take my other 40. I did not sell my dosage. My doctor did monitor me.
What about your Valium? How much Valium are you taking a day?
Right now I'm taking 1 to 10 milligrams a day, and it still helps me. It kept me from losing my
Hold on, they will not get Valium at your clinics, will they?
If people are presently, for example in her case, if people come to us who are on a number of drugs, over a period of time we will gradually reduce the other drugs in a medically safe manner so that finally they're left with methadone as the only.
Did you find in the private doctor scheme that there was a lack of any attempt to wean and get them off altogether?
In some cases, yeah, that we have found that people have just remained static for years.
But mind you, you must be blamed too. These other people who've been on for 13 or 16 years must have started at the foundation.
That's
and
right.
then when the doctors came into the picture, they weren't always in the picture, were they?
No.
It's an awful problem. Best of luck, ma'am. Gone. Go ahead, please.
Yes, as a regular taxpayer, my first exposure has been to your show, and I'm appalled by two things. One is the fact of the cost of the program, and two is the lack of a sense of responsibility by these people. They seem to feel, for some reason, that the government or society should support this need. Why doesn't the government take it one step further and set a time limit for 6 months or a year? And if these people don't want to help themselves, make them as responsible as anybody else. If they then get into the criminal activity, then they should go to jail. I'm sure it can't cost more than $100 a day to put them in jail. And to take it one step further, another analogy, if I develop a compulsion to steal, why doesn't the government set up mini stores so I can break into it? I just don't understand why the government is even being as liberal as what they are.
Sir, I must admit you've added a little note of sanity. I was close to the problem for a long while. These gentlemen are close to it now. And it's very difficult to convince a methadone addict that the circumstances are anything other than the world owes them a living the way they want it.
I agree. I think this whole issue is being sidestepped by the sensitivities to these people to continue the.
Fair enough. What do you say to that, Dr. Graham?
Well, I'm a physician, and my job is to help people get well. And I think addiction's an illness in some cases, and I think my aim is to help people get better.
Well, Carol, you're at the start of a new problem about which there will be considerable fuss. Do you think it's going to work?
Definitely.
I wonder how many of your methadone addicts presently being treated by doctors or by your clinics will vanish into the woodwork.
Good point.
That's hard to say, and only time will tell. One of the things I should mention is that we're going to be evaluating what we're doing very carefully. We're going to have a full-time research person who's going to evaluate the impact of the program and whether or not it is cost efficient.
Before April the 1st, you will announce your 2 new clinics, and all methadone users will get a notification, I presume, about where they should go for the treatment in future if they wish to continue it.
That's right, and between now and then we'll also prepare information packages so that we can answer a lot of their questions.
And you're hopeful you can wipe out the sale of gallon jugs and black marketeering of heroin.
That's right.
My thanks to Dr. Graham and to Carol Shaw. Next, Betty Green on the Vancouver Right to Life Society pro-life abortion. After the break. Last week, I had 2 spokesmen for the Concerned Citizens for Choice in Abortion plugging their abortion law on trial in Vancouver this weekend. And fair is fair on a subject which I just as soon leave alone as tackle. But here this morning is Betty Green, who is from the Vancouver Right to Life Society and has been the principal protagonist for pro-life. Well, the abortion law is on trial, Betty, and maybe it should be on trial. It seems to work in different ways across the country. Some hospitals allow abortions, some hospitals no. The Morgentaler caper. Your views?
It's the worst law we've ever had in this country. and it should be on trial, and I'm glad to see it is on trial in the Borowski case, in the Demers case, in the Carruthers case, in the Cecilia Moore case, the young lady who's been fired by Human Resources. We've had 2 or 3 cases where fathers have tried to protect their children. In Toronto, we've got the police chief and the police department protecting the abortionists. We've had 2 judges saying that what's going on in that clinic is murder and that the clinic is open only to flout the law. We've got priests and ministers being arrested and thrown in jail. We've got ordinary businessmen who say to the policemen, uphold the law. They're dragged into jail, thrown in without bail. A man who simply said to the police, why don't you protect the innocent instead of the abortionist, gets dragged into jail.
You may have me confused, Betty, but Henry Morgentaler was acquitted in November of, when was it, 84, on charges laid because they opened an abortion clinic in Toronto, right?
Yes, but when he was arrested that time, they asked that he have bail conditions and the clinic be kept shut. The judge said, well, we've no evidence that dear Dr. Morgentaler is going to continue to commit his crime, so at this time we will not impose any bail conditions. So Morgentaler and Scott and the rest of them went right back out, opened their clinic and started openly performing abortions and admitting it in public. The Attorney General, Peterson, or Scott and Peterson, the Premier of Ontario, keep saying, oh, we cannot close the clinic. All they have to do is go back into court and say to this judge, it's obvious this man is continuing to break the law while he is waiting trial, and you've got to close it.
You're losing me because he was acquitted. What about the overall?
He was not acquitted. That whole trial has been thrown out. There was a jury acquittal which went to the appeal, and the appeal court said that the conduct of this trial was so bad, and the actions of the jury in disregarding the law were so bad that in effect there has been no trial.
Let's look at the broad picture of your battle. You've been battling this for how many years now?
Oh, since 1972, Jack.
1972. The broad picture of your battle. Do you feel you're winning? Have you managed, do you think, to put a stop to a complete freedom for women to have abortions as they wish?
No, we have not. But what we have done...
That's your object. You want to stop all abortion.
We want to stop the killing of all innocent unborn children, and we want to see the Charter interpret the criminal code to say, recognize that this unborn child that we are working to protect is as much a human being as you and I, Jack, and is entitled to his right to life.
Okay, you want to say that the fetus in the womb at the moment of conception is an unborn child entitled to life, and that nothing can be done by any doctor or any person, including the mother, to harm that child.
That child has as much right to be protected by the law as you or I, Jack.
Has there been a charter decision on whether or not the fetus is an individual?
No, there has been a lower court decision that has recognized in the first trial in the Borowski case that in fact that child is a human being from the moment of conception, that life begins at conception. But then the court said, well, it's a human being, nobody's going to argue with that, but it's not a legal person.
In other words,
and that now the appeal in the Borowski case, which was heard in December, and we're awaiting the judge's decision. In the appeal court, the judge is now asked to say, well, if the criminal code does not recognize that individual human being as a legal person, then the criminal code is in an affront of the Charter. The Charter says everyone has got a right to life, and if the criminal code doesn't recognize that right to life for the unborn at the moment, then the criminal code must be changed.
In other words, it must be overruled by the Charter.
It must be overruled by the Charter.
For the benefit of those who haven't heard you on my program before, are there any abortions to which you subscribe permission?
No. The deliberate intent to kill an unborn child or any other person is an affront to justice.
Not from rape, not from medical infirmity, not from any known cause. You say no, 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 no.
No. I don't think that we should kill the rapist's child for what the rapist did. Are you for capital punishment for rapists?
Not for capital punishment for rapists, but I might as well tell you that I don't think a rapist's child should be born to give incredible trauma to some 12-year-old little girl.
Oh, I see. What about the 12-year-old little girl? Do you think that the 12-year-old little girl should be killed?
Of course
Has
not.
she got a right to life?
Of course she has.
Well, then why doesn't she have that right to life from the very moment of the beginning of her life, which was when she was conceived?
Betty, I'm not going to get, I am here as a neutral arbiter today to give you time to state your views, and I'm not about to get in a barney with you. So you can say what you wish. I will occasionally put reasonable questions. In fact, I gave you an opinion that I would abort a rapist's child.
Right.
And you and I will just disagree on that from now till the end of time, won't we?
I hope not, Jack. I hope that everybody can learn as they age.
Well, I've aged enough to know enough. I must admit my position has softened a little bit on the whole problem because society is looking after babies a little better than it used to. But there was a time in British Columbia when we couldn't find homes by the 100 for unwanted children. I'm not saying that you could retroactively abort them, but abortion at that time might have been good for a lot of people.
Well, there are a lot of people walking around here now today, Jack, who are glad that you didn't have that wish.
Maybe it was you, or maybe it was me.
Maybe it was us.
Who can tell? I'm going to go to the phones now. You talk to Betty Green, and I shall be moderate and an arbiter and not a protagonist after the break. Go ahead to Betty Green of Vancouver Right to Life Society.
Good morning, Miss Green. The last time abortions were legal in Canada, approximately 2,000 women died a year, and approximately 20,000 a year were hospitalized. If abortion is again illegal, what solution do you see to this carnage, knowing that sexual relations shall continue and that birth control is not 100% effective?
Well, I don't know where you get your figures from, sir, but in the whole of the time that we have records of women dying from abortion, there weren't more than, I think there was in total about 2,000 women in the 30 years prior to the changing of the law. In the 10-year period before the law was changed, there was an average about 12 deaths a year from women who went to these backstreet butchers like the gentleman that was here last week. And those are unfortunate deaths. There are still women dying from backstreet butchers, and they're dying also from the legal abortionists. In the United States, abortion is the 5th leading cause of death amongst women. And even the Center for Disease Control says that only 50% of the abortion deaths are being properly reported nowadays, because the same people who are doing the abortion are the people who look after these women when they come back into the hospital with their serious complications.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Betty Green.
Yes, good morning.
I almost completely agree with you on all you say. The only possibility where I would disagree is where there is a medical problem and it might cause serious health problems to the woman. It'd be pretty hard for me to choose between my wife and an unborn child.
Well, fortunately, sir, with the state of today's medical technology, you're not going to be asked to make that choice. Since the late 50s, the medical textbooks in obstetric and gynae have said that there is no known condition for which abortion is the recommended treatment where you have a distressed pregnant woman. And in fact, if you look at some of the medical textbooks, you'll find that abortion would be contraindicated for a lot of these women who are very ill. The ill woman's big problem is that she's probably going to miscarry unless she gets the absolute best of medical care.
I thought of the bad old days when a farmer would let the... Let me get that. Oh, forget it. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Webster, I'd just like to say about the 12-year-old girl, the hypothetical girl you referred to, the self-righteousness of that attitude really offends me. Why should a 12-year-old girl have to take the responsibility for a situation that she didn't create? And who's going to take responsibility when this little girl commits suicide or turns to prostitution or has to spend the next 6 or 7 years of her life on welfare?
Well, the 12-year-old girl who is sexually abused, and it's my position that a child at that age cannot consent to sexual activity, I think then she is a victim of sexual abuse. She needs counseling, she needs support, and she needs help. But her child, if she becomes pregnant, the child she is carrying is as much an individual human being as she is, and they both need help. the worst thing you could do for the 12-year-old girl is submit her to an abortion, because you might at that point cause her more physical harm than allowing her to carry through with the pregnancy, deliver the child, and then get on with her life.
Like such as medical advance, it would be easy for the kind of medicine we have now to prevent the conception were it handled quickly enough, wouldn't it?
No, there's nothing. These morning after pills that they talk about, Jack, are in fact a very early abortion.
Go ahead from Aldergrove.
Yes, good morning, Jack. I'd like to find out what we're supposed to do with the little girls who are involved with incest and now end up carrying their father's children.
Well, now that the little girl is pregnant and she's come to the attention of the authorities, hopefully you'll arrest the father and you'll get that child out of the home where she's being abused, and you'll do something to help counsel her so that she doesn't become a street prostitute or a runaway.
But she has the baby.
But if she can just get an abortion, then father's off the hook. He can drag his kid into one of the corner clinics, have the doctor abort her, no questions asked, and take her home and start using her again.
Go ahead from Grand Forks.
Grand Forks. I would just like to ask where all of the Right to Life people were in 1968 when we had babies hanging from the ceiling, when you could apply to adopt a baby and get a little boy who was 8 months old in 2 weeks.
Well, I'm glad that people were so fortunate then that they could get a child in 2 weeks. People now are waiting years or being told they can't have their name on the list.
Children that I was phoned to ask if I would take another, and most of them, especially if they were of mixed race, spent their entire life in foster care because there were very, very few families willing to adopt a baby who wasn't a Caucasian infant.
Yeah, and those people, although they were raised in orphanages or foster homes, are still alive today, most of them.
I really agree with you.
They're glad to be alive.
But I don't feel that people can take a sanctimonious position when there was nobody willing to look after the children.
That's not true. You were.
No, they weren't.
You were.
I got to come in. Every week I used to broadcast for homes for handicapped Indian children, handicapped part-colored children, handicapped children who were being kept in motels. We had floods and floods and floods of them, and human resources were so much at the wit's end. I used to broadcast every week. Do you want one?
Good for you, Jack. But those people are still alive. Whether they were living in the, brought up like that, it's better to be brought up like that than to be murdered, isn't it?
Well, you're not going to trap me. I don't think. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack. I'm a pro-choice person, and I'm calling to state my views on abortion, and that I have had one myself in the last couple of years, and I believe that women should have the right to choose. I was on the pill. I've been taking proper birth control for years, and it was just one of these 1 in a million chances.
Oh, I see. But you were aware that that 1 in a million chance could happen. You were told when they put you on the pill that it was not 100%, that there was a possibility you could get pregnant, so you knew that.
Oh, yeah, I realized, but I'm just saying that here everyone's picking on Dr.
So now you feel justified
who has sort of changed things around, because I remember years ago what women went through.
Okay, you were saying now?
Well, what you're saying is that she felt justified in using abortion as a backup to birth control.
Well,
I
believe that if a
woman
has been taking proper precautions and something like this happens, then it really is not her fault.
No, you knew that you could get pregnant. You knew that possibility was there. It's like playing Russian roulette or, having one drink and then deciding you're going to drive home. You knew you could get pregnant despite the fact that you were taking that pill. And now you're saying that you've got a right to have taken the life of your child. Well, I reject the idea that any mother has got the right to kill her child, whether it's 2 years old or 2 months old.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, what annoys me is that I really think that you have a self-righteous attitude, and what bothers me so much about it is 11 years ago, I had an abortion. At the time, I was recovering from major brain surgery. I was on birth control pills due to the various illnesses that I had at that time and the problems that I was experiencing. I vehemently stayed on my birth control pills. Now, am I supposed to tell my husband to stay away from me because there's a chance that I might get pregnant? Now, in the meantime, my general GP and my neurologist both would not even consider allowing the pregnancy to continue. Was I supposed to...
Oh, so they made the decision to get rid of your child?
sacrifice my life?
No, it's your life. If you wish to expose yourself to pregnancy, then you should accept it.
I have since had a child. This is 11 years since the abortion, and it still torments me to this day. Was I supposed to allow myself the possibility that I might die and have a child that was either miscarried when I died or was born to a mother that was not alive anymore?
Who told you you could die?
She had a brain surgery.
You'd had your brain surgery.
And a general practitioner. I had had such delicate brain surgery, and I have so many bits and pieces holding my brain together. They were not prepared to allow for any pressure, any undue problems that might
Fair enough. I think we've got the
it.
picture, ma'am. We've got the picture. Betty, I'm grateful to be here this morning. Are you going to go to this abortion law and trial thing?
Oh, I'll probably go down and monitor what they're saying. They usually give us plenty of ammunition when they have these speak-out type things.
And if you want to get in touch with Betty and her Vancouver Right to Life Society, here is the information. Vancouver 92775 West Broadway, 733-6266. Thank you very much, Betty.
Thank you.
I'll be back after break. Per Anger, the director of the Raoul Wallenberg Center in Stockholm, is going to be here tomorrow morning. You know who Wallenberg is, the famous Swedish diplomat who vanished into the maw of the systems the USSR may still be alive many, many years later. And from Ottawa, direct from Ottawa, an editor of a newspaper, Keith Spicer, used to be official languages commissioner. Very bright for a newspaper man, at 9 a.m. precisely.
Expo 86, 99 days to go.
The story of Raoul Wallenberg, who may still be alive in the Soviet Union, at 9 a.m. precisely. One of the great unfinished mysteries of World War II. Where is Raoul Wallenberg, who helped thousands